Welcome to the Explainer. When we hear the word geopolitics, we usually picture borders, massive trade deals, or military alliances, right? But actually, right now, the most intense geopolitical shifts on the planet are quietly reshaping the technology that you and I rely on every single day. So today, we're unpacking a massive, real game-changer of a legislative move from the European Commission, the European Technological Sovereignty Package.
But hey, before we get bogged down in heavy policy, I want you to really stop and think about something for a second. Who actually controls the tech that keeps your local hospital running? Or, say, the software managing your city's power grid? It's so easy to just assume all this critical infrastructure is totally self-contained. But the reality? Our daily lives literally depend on the sprawling, invisible web of global supply chains. And right now, Europe is waking up to the fact that relying so heavily on outside suppliers for these core digital technologies, well, it leaves them incredibly vulnerable.
Which brings us to a pretty powerful point made by European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. She put it like this: "We cannot afford to depend on others for the technologies that keep our hospitals running, our energy grids stable, and our services secure." You can really hear the high stakes there, can't you? This package, it isn't just a defensive measure, it's a bold, offensive shift. The goal is to leverage Europe's massive talent pool, their research, and their single market to finally make their own technological choices.
Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to break this down into 4 parts. First, the tech sovereignty package itself. Second, chips, cloud, and AI. Third, open source and energy. And finally, number 4, the road ahead. All right, starting with part 1, the tech sovereignty package.
So, what are we really talking about here? This package is a massive paradigm shift. Technological sovereignty might sound like just another political buzzword, but it's actually a highly practical framework. It means taking Europe's undeniable excellence in academic research and, finally, translating that into hard industrial strength. Basically, it's about reducing structural dependencies, so if a global crisis hits, Europe isn't left waiting for critical components from halfway across the world. It's about having the complete autonomy to develop, deploy, and secure the tech that everyday life runs on.
To pull this off, the Commission proposed 4 interconnected pillars. Honestly, think of it like building a complete digital house. First, the CHIPS Act 2.0. That gives you the foundational hardware, the physical building blocks. Then the Cloud and AI Development Act provides the computing capacity, essentially the brain of the house. Next, the open source strategy acts as the software architecture, making it all run smoothly and transparently. And wrapping it all up, the strategic roadmap for energy. Because, well, you need sustainable electricity to keep the lights on without, destroying the environment.
Moving right along to part 2, chips, cloud, and AI, the real brains and brawn of the operation. Because this right here, this is where the global tech race is at its most intense. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer scale. By 2030, a staggering 70% of the entire global semiconductor market will be driven strictly by AI-related components. 70%. That number visually proves exactly why Europe is moving with absolute panic-level urgency. Semiconductors are literally the lifeblood of artificial intelligence. If Europe doesn't massively scale up its local production for these specific cutting-edge chips, they'll be left completely in the dust.
And right now, to be perfectly honest, the contrast is pretty stark. Because despite the original CHIPS Act back in 2023, Europe still relies way too heavily on third countries for advanced production and chip design. But the future goal with this new CHIPS Act 2.0, it's a hugely ambitious, localized pivot. We're talking about speeding up permits, deepening ecosystem cooperation, and specifically targeting cutting-edge tech by setting up massive AI gigafactories right there on European soil.
But chips alone just aren't enough. You have to have somewhere to put them, right? Enter the Cloud and AI Development Act. The absolute most striking goal here is their push to triple data center capacity in Europe over the next 5 to 7 years. Triple it! And they want to do this sustainably too. They're introducing a single EU-wide framework to assess cloud and AI sovereignty, protecting sensitive data, and creating these local hubs. They're calling them experience and acceleration centers to help businesses actually adopt and scale all this new tech.
Okay, let's shift gears to part 3, open source and energy. Moving from high-tech hardware over to community-driven coding and the physical grid. Take a second and just look at this massive number, 3 million. That is the number of open source contributors currently living and working inside Europe right now.
It's huge. It's this incredible pre-existing talent pool. Europe already has the minds needed to build amazing digital tools. The real challenge is just harnessing that raw talent to build solutions that are made in Europe for Europe and fundamentally based on European values.
And that is exactly what the open source strategy is designed to do. It takes that 3 million strong community and uses it to scale up sovereign alternatives in really vital areas, like cloud computing and cybersecurity. They're aiming to heavily support open source startups and, this is a big one, implementing strict procurement guidelines. So instead of defaulting to outside tech giants, public administrations are highly encouraged to buy and use locally made, secure European solutions.
But we got to talk about the elephant in the room here. AI and data centers require just mind-boggling amounts of electricity. The strategic roadmap for digitization and AI and energy tackles this head-on. Because if we just start plugging thousands of new AI data centers into the current grid, energy prices are going to skyrocket. That puts massive pressure on industrial competitiveness, and yet it hits your monthly utility bills directly.
Let's move to and see how this builds into actionable steps. The roadmap outlines 3 smarter energy goals. First, integrating these new data centers into the energy system transparently and sustainably. Second, putting the pedal to the metal on rolling out smart meters, which gives you, the consumer, direct control over your energy use to keep those bills down. And third, which I think is absolutely fascinating, building sovereign AI models trained specifically on European energy data to figure out how to make the entire electricity grid way more efficient.
Executive Vice President Teresa Ribera actually summed up this really delicate balancing act perfectly. She noted, digitalization of energy system is Europe's chance to get more from the same infrastructure. So Europe's digital ambition powers the energy transition rather than competing with it. It's such a brilliant way to frame the dual goal here. Managing this explosive, growing energy demand from the tax sector, but doing it without abandoning Europe's incredibly strict and totally necessary climate commitments.
Which brings us to our final section. Part 4, the road ahead.
To take this incredibly ambitious package from just a policy paper on a desk to actual law and physical infrastructure, the Commission is moving fast, really fast. Following an agreement in principle on high-performance computing back on June 1st, they are slated to launch the call for those massive AI gigafactories in July. And concurrently, they're running ongoing consultations with member states and the European Investment Bank Group to figure out how to actually finance all this massive tech equity at scale. However, we definitely need to keep in mind that right now, these acts are still just proposals. To become reality, the whole package has to successfully navigate the complex machinery of the European Union. These legislative proposals will be heavily debated, scrutinized, and negotiated by both the European Parliament and the Council of the European Union before they officially enter into force. So, it's still a pretty long political road ahead.
So what does this all mean? It leaves us with one massive, lingering question to think about. Can Europe really win the global AI race while playing by its own sustainable rules? That is the absolute core tension of this entire package. Europe wants to build a competitive, cutting-edge digital fortress, but they insist on doing it cleanly, transparently, and sustainably. Will this bold strategy secure their future, or are the costs and regulations just going to hold them back? It's a giant, fascinating geopolitical puzzle, and one we are for sure going to keep our eyes on. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and definitely keep exploring.